All right, welcome back to Perdido Key Gaming. Today we're back on War in the Pacific. I thought I'd go through a typical what I do during a turn. So, as I said, it's April 24th now. Here's Pearl Harbor. I'm playing the Allies, which are the U.S., the Brits, the Australians, New Zealanders, the Dutch, Chinese, and then at the end, of course, the Russians pop in. Anyway, so what I usually do is go to the ops reports, check out to see what reinforcements have shown up. So, destroyer tender Hamul has shown up in Panama Canal area, and a coastal minesweeper at Dunedin, which not too crazy. I look at the SIGIN reports, see if there's anything I might, be able to take advantage of. A bunch of land units. They got anti-air battalion at Tinian, radio transmissions in Cameron Bay, heavy volume of radio transmissions in Tokyo for some reason. Nimor Naval Fortress located at Kwajalein. Otherwise, I don't think nothing really crazy. But anyway, so I go over the Panama Canal. I work my way through the outside places first. So we got destroyer tender, which when you're actually, hold on a second. So the tenders work kind of on what supplies they're carrying. So capacity of 4710. So if you leave them in port and then load them, they get loaded kind of sort of all the way. Well, no, it's only 300 supply. That's kind of weird. Maybe, there's just not enough supplies. So anyway, picked up some supplies here. But everything the destroyer tender does, rearm some ships. It can repair ships. So probably the best thing to do is, and I either send them to San Diego right off. It'll take them quite a while to get there. So, a week or so coming up from the Panama Canal. But destroyer tenders are very useful in small bases where they can, as they did historically, resupply, rearm, repair small units. Destroyer tenders not only can do destroyers, but other ships, small craft as well. Quite obvious. There's no reinforcements here. If you see R for the headquarters, it means restricted. They really can't be, unless you change the headquarters for a tremendous amount of political points, they cannot be moved from their commands. So West Coast, 4th Bomber Command, 4th Fighter Command all belong to the West Coast. So all these guys are basically training up pilots, and what you can do is you can go in there and take out some of the better pilots and put them in other squadrons, or make them available for other squadrons. Now, you can't move pilots from one squadron to another directly. So then I make my way up the West Coast. We know there were no reinforcements. I've got a tanker here loading oil. It's headed for a couple of tankers loading oil headed for Melbourne and Sydney, who need them for production, heavy industry, light industry production. Obviously, every once in a while I'll check out the ships that are there, but those should show up in the reinforcements. There's this guy here is headed for the Southwest Pacific, so he's in strategic move mode, so that means he really can't do anything right now. But so troop load costs is 1100 and cargo is 3428. So let's get him going to the West Pacific or Southwest Pacific. So Um, APs are personnel transports, can carry 1,800 and 2,600 cargo. So that means I'm going to need you know, at least a personnel transport and a cargo transport to get that unit loaded. Unload cargo to do not unload because you don't want the ship dropping off your unit at Pearl Harbor or some other location where he's not supposed to be. So you can load supplies at the same time, which is always good if you just want to quickly just load the troops. If you know the troops are going to a place that's already well supplied, good to go. But in this case, you always verify a load, make sure that you got enough troop space and cargo space, accept load, and they'll start loading the troops. And yes, around here, there's Japanese submarines. Let's just put it that way. So they're really good at ambushing. So I moved the unit to the task forces San Diego, then try to get around the usual Japanese submarines that are hanging around the Channel Islands. There are ASW forces in the area. These squadrons here are attached to Fleet Air West. Not, these are float planes, float search guys, ASW patrol. I have them set them ASW patrol. At least they'll give some sort of. They're not as good as Catalinas or things like that. So, which is, that's what these guys are doing as well. VP Patrol Squadron 91, Patrol Squadron 43. Anything with a VM is a Marine unit. And so all these guys are kind of training up pilots as well. Anyway, so enough of that. Up to San Francisco, where I got some transports loading a bunch of supplies, and they're headed for various locations on the supply route, on the supply in the sea lanes of communication. Drop off supplies here and there to make sure nobody gets unhappy that they ran out of beer or whatever. And I go up. There's Canadians really, all they're really doing is helping out with ASW. They've got a bunch of patrol planes, a bunch of ships like YPs are coastal patrol ships. Not a lot going on with them. You can see their armament, things like that, DC rack, and a submarine value of 1. So not really good at it as compared to KVs, which are corvettes, which are specifically, if you do your research in World War II, corvettes are a ASW type ship, and it's a Flower class, which is a very famous class of corvettes in World War II. So, matter of fact, I think some of them still hang around as yachts. Anyway, there's a bunch of corvettes, and these AMs are minesweepers for the most part. So, but they do have an ASW value, do depth charges, and probably some sort of gear, ASW gear. I don't know if they probably don't have sonar, but anyway, so that's what the Canadians kind of do. They do have some troops, I believe, that show up as reinforcements later on, which is always good to check. To see if any like Canadian infantry or armor or whatever, parachutists or people like that show up to be used in the South Pacific, Southwest Pacific, or anywhere else. Go up to Anchorage where they're doing their own thing. In World War II, the Japanese did invade Kiska and Attu. So, whatever's assigned in the North Pacific, I'd go ahead and send them up there just to get some reconnaissance going and things like that, in case the AI does do anything sneaky anyway. So 42nd Construction Regiment is hanging out there building airfield capacity on the infamous Adak Island. Same for Dutch Harbor, trying to build them up to at least one air capacity. That way, Zero can handle patrol aircraft, And VP-41 with 12 Catalinas is currently stationed there. And there's enough air support from the USM base force here, plus there's these AVs. So these are seaplane tenders. There's three types of seaplane tenders for the US and the Allies. There's AVPs, which are small, pretty small seaplane tenders. And then you've got AVDs, which are converted force stack destroyers, which are turned into seaplane tenders. But they basically provide air support for only patrol aircraft, for only PBYs and float planes and things like that. So it's slow going here. There's plenty of supply, and building an airfield depends on supply, but it also depends on how many engineers are hanging out there. I don't think they're very happy at Dutch Harbor because it's taking forever for them to build a little simple air, float plane base. Anyway, so, and once you get to one, you can drop some fighters off here as well, but they can't do anything but local combat air patrol. They can't fly out of here to attack guys. I mean, fighters can do, ground attack and things like that. Once it hits a 2, which is once this gets to a 4, moving the construction engineers here to help out. The same thing kind of goes here. There's another combat engineer regiment which has 38 engineers, and basically these guys are going to get moved down and to help build the airfield at Dutch Harbor, which, it's, that's what happens. Anyway, so that's enough of the. And then I head on over to India, Kuwait, and Yemen to see what's going on. Basically, Abadan is in Kuwait is providing a lot of fuel, and not so bad with the supplies. It's also got an oil thing going, but so I got tankers here, and that's every once in a while I'll just load up some fuel and take it down to India or to Australia. It's a long trip for them, but kind of need that oil. And then Aden, of course, it's my big problem right here is there's a whole division of British troops here waiting, as well as this unit's supposed to go to the Southwest Pac, so it's a long trip for those poor guys. But I've got a whole division here, and my mistake, I've only got one personnel transport, so I'm trying to move as many personnel transports up there to, there's one, two right there, to get that division moved down, and they're headed for the Southwest Pacific as well, but specifically Kandari, which is part of my plan, part of my strategic plan. Roll in there and steamroll those guys so that the Allies can get another foothold in that area. Cape Town, loading supplies. These guys are going down to Perth, Australia, drop off supplies there for Australia, which is one of the main focuses of my particular strategy is build up forces in Australia and spread out from there. So then I go down to India and check on any task forces that might be hanging out. So Bombay also has a lot of supplies, so I load up supplies here to take down to Burma and things like that. And we got a couple of task forces, destroyer Foxhound and an AKV is an air transport, which is basically a cargo ship with a flight deck on it. So what it does is it enables you to pick up a squadron and take them to their location, and once they're there, they're instantly put together. If you transport them on a regular cargo ship, they show up, and then the engineers and air crew and stuff like that have to put the plane back together. So they show up damaged, and you have to wait for them to become operational. So an AKV is pretty handy. The Foxhound is tagging along for the ride. heading for Burma. This is a Burma squadron. Gonna need it, and you'll see why. The same with that Brit division up at Aden. Might have to have him stop by to do something. 3 task forces at Colombo. Local minesweeping is always good because your submarines can be involved in submarine mine laying missions, so they can sneak up on a port, lay mines, and just, it's really irritating. So a bunch of personnel transports. So definitely going up to help load that division. You got a ASW combat guy. This is another one of those mine sweepers. I'm just moving them to Colombo because there is a submarine hanging around here. Notice that last turn. Definitely got to keep track of those guys. Then over to Calcutta and Diamond Harbor and the Burma area in fall, building up a huge amount of guys that were evac'd from Burma. So now they're all hanging out here, getting happy, getting ready to move in. The Japanese have a task force here, which is probably, they keep trying to pile in on Akyab, which is a entry point into India. So this is going to be a heavy fight. Got the battleships Prince of Wales and Ramillies and Resolution, along with a bunch of cruisers and destroyers on an intercept mission to try to get these guys. There's also a small surface platform or surface task force made up of a destroyer escort and patrol gunboats that can chase off task forces. And the same kind of goes for these 2 surface task forces. MLs are motor launches, which are sort of like PT boats, but they can do a little bit of everything. They don't have torpedoes, but they do have guns, machine guns, cannon, and DC racks. So they have a small anti-submarine value, as well as being kind of useful for shooting up transports. So that's what they're going to do, head down there. And the same with this. These units are all, I usually use them for ASW, but right now I keep trying to chase off these Japanese task forces, which are trying to land troops at Akyab. They've got another 3 units headed overland, and all these guys are really making a push. So this is going to become a huge huge fight right here, definitely. Chittagong is, still building up the airfield here. Anything less than air capacity of 4, really, your level bombers cannot fly. Torpedo bombers, fighters, dive bombers, light level bombers can fly out of there. Same goes with Imphal. Imphal's trying to build it up so that I can use level bombers, which will become useful in this fight. But again, it's just taken a while, and it's probably because they need more supplies. So let's see here. These British units, unfortunately, were kicked out of Rangoon. They got face stomped. They're trying to get to India, but chances are that that's not going to work out. So the main point in Burma is to get to Mandalay, which is a pretty good base. For whatever reason, they haven't face stomped Lashio yet. I could probably, there's no land forces here, but it's a direct line into the hump into China, so the supply that's what you want, is the supplies to flow into China. And that's kind of what is supposed to happen here. Get the supplies, fly them into Chongqing over the Burma Hump. I believe that's what they called it, using transport aircraft, the Flying Tigers, etc., etc. You know, good times. Um, then I moved down into Indonesia, Malaysia, and Sumatra area. Still kind of a fight going on, but I see whenever you see a color that's getting more and more red, that means there's stronger and stronger units. The Dutch and the Malaysians and Indonesians are, you know, all here. Unfortunately, um, you know, the combat assault strength is 314, so it'll be a tough fight for the Japanese. But yeah, in the scheme of things, they're probably not going to be able to do anything. So they got 4 fighters still hanging out here, and they're doing ground attack. They're shooting up. This force here. Um, they got, you know, a big old chunk of supplies, so you know they could probably hang out for a couple of weeks anyway. And down to Java, where Batavia is the capital, really. These days it's now Jakarta, of course. But Batavia is heavily sieged. They're not going to last very long. And there's some Dutch torpedo boats here because they keep trying to bring supplies down to Batavia, and I keep sending these patrol boats in to intercept them and drive them off. So that's making life a little bit harder for the Japanese units, but not much. Otherwise, there's really nothing I can do with most of these units because they are all restricted to the Dutch East Indies. You can see, you know, sparse units. There's really nothing these guys can do except hang out. That's kind of interesting that these 2 forces, the Kendari Base Force and Garrison Battalions, are hanging out here. You know, there's some supply, and basically that's what I'm doing with the USS Seal here. The USS Seal is a sub-transport. He's loading supplies and taking them off and dropping them off for these guys up here. It'll let them hold on as long as possible because this is a perfect entry point to try to take Kendari. There's a road here. So if there's, you know, it might take a while because the port capacity is only 2, but that makes an inject point where I can go in there, drop off the troops here instead of an opposed landing at Kendari. Hope that makes sense. But lots of Japanese task forces hanging out. When you hover over them, sometimes you can see what ship types are associated, but you're relying on the eyes of your pilots. So these guys could be tankers, or they might not be tankers. They could be carriers for all we know. Same with here. There are a bunch of LBs, which are landing barges. They got some minesweepers and some light cargo ships headed northeast, going that way. I think there's a battleship force here, the Revenge and this Royal Sovereign, along with a couple of cruisers and destroyers headed for Bima. I'm trying to see if I can surprise any Japanese forces that might be heading in this area and just blast them out of the water with a couple of battleships. That'd be great. They've got a huge number of Betty bombers with probably at Kendari and Ambon, and they're doing their best to bomb Timor-Leste here. I've had to evacuate some of the forces, some of the ships, because the bombers are doing harbor attacks, which are devastating from dock ships. Kuepeng is a big base here. PT boats all over the place, which are pretty handy for coastal defense, but you know they're heavily outgunned, and you know getting a torpedo attack on an actual warship is 1 in a million chance. So PT boats that were out here at Lao Term, kind of hanging out here. Matter of fact, I need to move this over here with these PT boats. Now, AGPs are PT boat tenders, and AGs are just general auxiliaries. Um, when they're in port, they actually um, provide uh, some assets they can repair, they can rearm, they can do little things. So having an AG import with an AGP means the PT boats are going to be getting repaired a little bit faster if there's any damage, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, here we are at Darwin, which is, if you know anything about Japanese Betty bombers, very long-range torpedo, twin-inch torpedo bombers. So Darwin is within range, and unfortunately, um, if there's any ships here that are trying to unload, then it's entirely possible they're going to get clocked. Um, got some more, lot more forces moving into the area. There's a ton of guys at Darwin. Um, Lots of ships, submarines, tenders, all sorts of things. Repair ships. Um, Darwin's a pretty big point of pretty good place to park yourself. So Air Forces, you can see a bunch of stuff that were evacuated from the Philippines. If it goes red here, that means it's scheduled to withdraw. They want to move this B-17 force to good old Europe, probably. So when I see them go red, I just withdraw them. Get you some political points, which is unfortunate because B-17 forces are very handy for ground attack and things like that, and destroying resources and shipyards and things like that. But unfortunately, all these guys are scheduled to move out. Removed by, well, this guy goes in November, so. But once I see some shenanigans up north, then I can use the B-17s to fly missions against them, because the air capacity is really, for heavy bombers, you need a 6. So I'm waiting to get my port capacity up. Once it hits 500 and a little bit, 96%, I'm going to work on my air capacity. Air capacity of 4 is good for most bombers, but the heavy bombers like B-17s, B-29s, things like that, you really need a 6 or higher. I need fuel. When it goes like that, it means you need fuel. So, really, there's nothing you can do except try to get down to Perth, which is invariably there's going to be fuel headed there at some point. I regularly send fuel to Perth, so eventually they're going to get refueled. And the same kind of goes for these guys. There's one ship here that is not going anywhere, unloading supplies, and they're going to have to hang out till Nanning here gets refueled. Well, the Nanning can hang out. The other guys can, go back to Cape Town, things like that. So, normally I don't send forces that unload at Darwin and through this sea, Gulf of Carpentria, Torres Strait, because the Japanese submarines are all over the place. So I have to make the long trip around the southern coast of Australia, which I'm sure is a beautiful view, down to Adelaide, Melbourne. So these guys here are probably, a bunch of transports, a bunch of tankers, and stuff like that. So they're just going to go hang out at, actually this oiler here it's going to Perth. It unloaded a bunch of fuel here at Adelaide, which needs it to do some industry. Same with Melbourne. The tanker headed for Melbourne, drop off some stuff. This guy, he dropped off some supplies, so head back to the west coast, get some more supplies, bring them back to Australia. That's all these transports do until they're used for troop movement. Let's see, what are we doing here? Some of these cargo forces I kind of keep, or cargo supply transports I keep together, because definitely needed for, why did I move this guy to Sydney when he's supposed to be going to South Pacific. I try to label my task forces where they're headed because it can become very confusing real soon. So South Pacific is naturally the Guadalcanal area. That's what they'll be doing. We got some fuel being unloaded here. Obviously very necessary. Alfred Clegg is already empty, sucking up fuel. So what I'll do is any empty ships I move into these task forces that are headed back to the west coast, you know, just to get them out of the way. There we go. So you can move ships between the ports and other task forces into these other forces, which is handy. Unloading for Southwest Pack reinforcement, unloading this, there's a towed artillery, towed anti-tank or something like that. Anyway, so, you know, it'll join up forces with any number of Southwest Pack stuff that might need to be moving around. Looks like we got a lot of stuff that needs to be moved out of Sydney and go into someplace useful. A bunch of little units that really, you know, aren't useful. The bigger the unit, the more useful it is, kind of, sort of. I mean, you can divide your, you know, divisions into brigades and your brigades into battalions and things like that to spread them out, you know, to make sure, you know, places are covered. But invariably, the bigger units work better when they're, you know, homogenous, when they're they got their own thing going. So Port Moresby, you know, just kind of, you know, trying to defend against constant Japanese air attacks. You can see this P-40 squadron here, 49th 8th Patrol Squadron, 49th Patrol Group. He's on escort duty. His fatigue is 14. So eventually he's going to get some downtime, and the 7th Patrol Squadron will take over Combat Air Patrol. Yeah, there's Guadalcanal. Building up forces in Lungaville, Espiritu Santo. These will, you know, the 161st Infantry Regiment, I believe, is probably going to be the first on the deck. I may go ahead, and there's a New Zealand battalion here. Big honk, not battalion, but brigade. Pretty high level assault value. So I'm probably going to just move this New Zealander battalion along with this field artillery. Will be the Lungaville or the Guadalcanal assault force. Got plenty of artillery, well, I don't see any combat engineers. Combat engineers are very useful. These port services guys kind of act as a kind of a mobile port, I guess is the way to look at it. Got a cruiser destroyer force here. I'm going to make a run up there to Iron Bottom Sound and try to trash some units. These guys just dropped off some folks at Luganville. Lots of Japanese submarines are hanging around here. Got more supply headed in. I'm going to move these guys down here to, they're going to be taking a trip around the bend to go to Darwin and drop off those supplies. The more supplies, the better off you are. Not much going on here, but there's Japanese submarines that hang around here. They hang around Suva, and they hang around Pago Pago. So sometimes you'll see a lot of activity, so it's best to take the southern cross route through the Tonga Islands and into the Samoan Islands. We discussed Canton before. They have Baker Island. Baker Island I need because it's the first stop off to go to Tarawa. And that is the plan. Hornets hanging out here along with the battleship force. Bombardment. The Hornet dive bomber groups really need to be upgraded. Right now they're a biplane dive bomber, which they get slaughtered by zeros. So right now he's hanging out. The Enterprise and the Yorktown are headed to Baker Island to hopefully shoot up some of these transports that keep bothering me down on Canton Island. Here's my invasion force and replenishment and stuff like that for the Baker Island adventure. And up to Palmyra, where got some transports hanging out here. Gonna just go ahead and consolidate those guys. I think the number of task forces eventually is limited, but I've never run into that issue. So we'll just send these guys on the long trip to San Francisco, where they can load some supplies, get repairs, get lunch, take a look around Midway and Johnson Island. The AI is very sneaky sometimes, so they just love parking. All of a sudden, this carrier force will show up here, and usually not the big Kido Butai, but a light carrier force, and they shoot up a bunch of stuff, and it gets kind of silly. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to take some units off of Midway Island. Right now, there's a Marine Defense Battalion and 2 base forces, but they are over the island can only take so many troops, and right now there's, according to Midway, there are 295 too many people on Midway. So, it's a good question. But hanging out here, more seaplane tenders to help out with taking care of the Air Force is hanging out here. We've got a fighter squadron, dive bomber squadron, a bombing squadron made up of A-20 Havocs, which are pretty good low-level bombers, and as well they can do naval attack, but their best thing to do is right now everybody's stood down except for these PBYs, trying to get their fatigue down, which is 0, so they're probably ready to basically go back to training to be fighter pilots. And that's what you do. The pilots eventually gain skill. So I put these guys on train for whatever mission. Dive bombers pretty much always, port attack, naval attack, but since they're land-based, some land-based Marine scout bomber squadron, naval attack, right? And last but not least, the A-20s are going to train for naval attack too, because there's really nothing going on, but fairly low level. One thing you got to watch out is training them when they're any aircraft, no matter what. If the range, if they're really flying out a lot, they will become fatigued, like they're going out of business. So that's the best thing to do is keep them from, train, but train locally, guys. Let's see, Pearl Harbor right now, we've got a replenishment force just hanging out, ready dispatch to any number of places, along with a 30 ship empty transport squadron, which we'll just, any empties, send to San Francisco. They can load up on supplies, resources, fuel. They have to go to LA to load oil, though, which is oil, needs to be supplied to some heavy industry centers, as explained before. Anyway, so that's kind of it. And after I'm done taking a look or moving stuff around, I usually go ahead and save. It does auto save, so right before it starts the turn, and off you go. I try to save it with a date and everything like that. So it's about to be the April 24th, 1942. Then I put today's date. I think today is 23rd, right? Yeah. I play one day a day. Not in a huge hurry. Um, Not in a huge hurry to, do four turns a day. I got other things that entertain me too. So anyway, there you go, and that's what I do. And then you hit go, and get in the orders phase. It runs the turn, and you're off and see what the Japan AI does a bunch of stuff, and invariably they have a heads up and on what you're doing, and unfortunately it becomes, you know, the Allies get stomped in the early war. That's basically all I want to say. Anyway, that's all I got for today. If you like what you see, hit like, subscribe. I know this is a very long video, so hopefully, leave me a comment or something like that, and we'll catch you tomorrow for some more Perdido Key Gaming.